To vouchsafe thy blessing upon this council, direct and prosper its deliberations to the advancement of thy glory and the true welfare of the people of the Whittlesea City Council. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven.
Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive them who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil.
For thine is the kingdom,
the power and the glory,
forever
and ever. Amen. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the City of Whittlesea, I would like to recognise the rich Aboriginal heritage of this country and acknowledge the Wurundjeri Willem clan as the traditional owners of this place. Tonight, we welcome our new acting CEO, Joe Carboni, and Mr. Carboni has worked in an executive leadership role across local government, healthcare and manufacturing and retail. We look forward to working with his insights and innovative leadership, and we welcome him to the City of Whittlesea. Yes, we can do a round of applause. Why not? I would also like to take a moment to thank the outgoing acting CEO, Kelvin Spiller, for his leadership over the last 3 months. Good evening to the members of the gallery. I am very excited that tonight will be the second time this year where we will be live streaming council meetings. This was an initiative that I personally championed and I think is a great addition to our community. Just a friendly reminder that although it is not intended that Channel 31 will film members of the gallery, there is of course a slim chance that you may be recorded. By remaining in the gallery, we assume that you do consent to being recorded. A recording of the meeting will be available online at Council's website from tomorrow morning. Now, on to the exciting business. Turns out the City of Whittlesea has won some awards. Last month, the City of Whittlesea Council won 2 prestigious awards and was a finalist in another, receiving recognition in both the local government and Victorian public sectors. Firstly, the City of Whittlesea won the 2020 LG Pro Award in the category Excellent Sustainability Award for contributing to developing an easy-to-access web portal which assists councils be more environmentally sustainable. The Supply Chain Sustainability School local government portal is a partnership project between the City of Whittlesea, Port Phillip and Wyndham councils, the Support Chain Sustainability School and EY Eco-Buy. Council also won the Institute of Public Administration Australia's Leading Employer Award for our 4-year People Plan. The plan involved more than 350 staff in its development and sets the direction for how the organisation needed to grow, change and improve across 5 key areas. The 5 key areas include the following: culture, leadership, capability, enabling organisation and wellbeing. These areas are required to be improved to ensure the City of Whittlesea could meet any challenges ahead and successfully deliver the community's Whittlesea 2040 vision. Council's building and planning team were also named finalists in the Service Delivery Initiative category at the LG Pro Awards for Excellence. The team were recognised for its priority development assessment process and fast lane planning assessment process, which aims to streamline the planning process. Well done to all of our staff who were involved in these important projects. It's wonderful to see the City of Whittlesea being recognised as a leader in the sector for each of these projects. I would really love for us to give a round of applause to our staff. Thank you very much. So, councillors, I note that you are all present, so we will move on from any apologies. Councillors, if you have a conflict of interest in any item on the notice paper, you may verbally disclose the type and nature of the interest now, and again immediately before consideration of the matter in question. Councillors, are there any items for which you have a conflict of interest to declare? Having none, we'll move on to confirmation of minutes. Councillors, I seek a motion to confirm the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Council held on the 4th of February and the special meeting of Council held on the 17th of February. Do I have a motion to confirm both those minutes? Moved Councillor Kelly, seconded Councillor Montaglione. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Now, Manager of Governance, I believe there are questions from the public.
Yes, Madam Mayor, there are three.
Thank you. So, 3 questions have been asked tonight by one person. On the grounds that the matter is not on the council agenda, raises issues of a confidential nature and is asked to embarrass a councillor or council officer, I'm ruling under the provisions of council's procedural matters local law that the questions will neither be read nor answered. So now we move on to petitions and joint letters. Councillors, I note that we have the following joint letter. An objection to the construction of 4 dwellings at 6 Pleasant Road, Thomastown. Councillor Pavlidis.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I rise to table the said petition from 11 residents who are objecting to the proposal of 4 dwellings at Pleasant Road, Thomastown, and I request that the relevant department prepares the relevant report in response to the petition, along with the item when it's ready to be come to council.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pavlidis. Do I have a seconder for that? Seconded, Councillor Cox. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Councillors, are there any other petitions or joint letters? Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to try and table this petition that I have received from the staff of the council in relation to the Chief Executive Officer.
Sorry, Councillor Cox, I've just received advice from the Manager of Governance that in relation to a resolution that was made at a previous council meeting, that matter is to be dealt with in the confidential section of this meeting. Councillors, are there any other...
Well, I'll move to
Councillor
dissent
Cox?
with that ruling.
So, moved. One. So I've received advice from the Manager of Governance. You can't actually have dissent on a resolution of council. It's not a ruling, it's a resolution that was adopted by council at a previous council meeting. So Councillor Cox, there is no dissent in the chair. Councillors, are there any other petitions or joint letters this evening?
Yes,
Councillor
thank you,
Pavlidis.
Madam Mayor. I do have a letter and from a family, a local family, regarding one of our local primary schools and the lack of all abilities parking bays. Now, I don't know whether any signatures have come through in this interim period, so this letter might have to be tabled at another meeting.
Okay, we'll wait for another meeting then. Thank you for notifying the council, Councillor Pavlidis. Are there any other petitions or joint letters this evening? Having none, councillors will move on to general business. Please indicate which items you wish to discuss from the agenda. We'll begin with Councillor Joseph and move clockwise. No, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cox. Thank you. Councillor Pavlidis. Thank you. Councillor Montaglione. Yep. Thank you. Councillor Kuzmevsky. Thank you. Councillor Alessi. Thank you. Councillor Kelly.
621, Madam Mayor, and 652.
Yep. Thank you. Was that all, Councillor Kelly?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Lalios. Please turn on your microphone. 6.4.2.
6.4.2, that's correct.
Was that all from you? Thank you. Councillor Desiato? No. And I notify the council that I'll be moving a report.
Yep.
622 is deferred to this meeting, so it needs to be, well, it can just be.
So bear with me. The Manager of Governance would like to clarify something with me.
I'm happy to move 6.2.2 if that's, because I know it was deferred, but I'm happy. I'm happy to.
Yes, we do need to
I'm happy to
pull
put
it out.
that out. Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Lalios. Okay, members of the public gallery, please note that councillors have chosen not to consider reports on the notice paper individually and have resolved to adopt in one resolution the recommendations listed on the notice paper for a number of reports. Such a resolution has the effect of adopting the officer's recommendation for each of these reports. Councillors, may I have a motion to move all remaining items en bloc? Moved Councillor Joseph, seconded Councillor Monteleone. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Councillors, the remaining items of business will now be considered and voted on separately in the order that they appear on the agenda. So we'll begin with item 6.2.1. Councillor Kelly.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to add to the recommendation, if I may. I just want to put in part of the recommendation that we revisit in 6 months the fees to continue monitoring membership to regain record membership numbers as of when the centre closed.
We'll just wait for our staff members to write that up. Sorry, Councillor, I think they
Revisit,
want some clarity there.
just revisit the fee structure in 6 months' time to regain the membership, the record memberships prior to the centre closing. Time to bring back the membership to their record numbers prior to the centre being closed.
Councillor, I believe there's a bit of confusion with point 2. Was that how you wanted it to be worded?
Well, if someone has a better way of wording it, but that was to revisit the fee structure after the centre's been open for 6 months, so we get back to the record numbers we had at the centre prior to it closing.
Makes sense. Do I have a seconder to that amendment? Councillors, if there's no...
I have a question to the acting CEO. Is this able to be done in view of the fact that we're setting a fee structure for a 12-month period in the budget process?
Thank you, Councillor. To the acting CEO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Please turn on your microphone. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, thank you for the question, Councillor Cox. Yes, it is correct to assume that or to establish that the fee structure is part of the budget process that we'll be going through in the next period of time. And that process can determine a way forward for any review to evaluate membership numbers, if that's so be called. But I also would ask if the Director of Community Services would like to add anything to that for the purposes of clarity.
Through you, Madam Mayor. That motion is slightly confusing in terms of how we monitor and evaluate that. I understand what the intentions of the councillor is just to ensure that we're actually tracking on increased membership, but it would be difficult once the fees have been approved in the middle of the year to actually re-evaluate those.
Councillor Kelly.
Maybe if we just make it reference, report back about the numbers and not necessarily talk about the fees.
Yep. So
If we can have some wording around that.
maybe even if you go to our governance staff to be able to assist them in drafting that.
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Alessi,
Yes,
under what section of the local law?
my point's got order. It's got to do about process, and you called the mover. You
Under
called
what
for.
section of the local
I don't
law,
know the
Councillor?
number. I don't know the number, but it's under process. And you called.
Councillor,
You
I will
called
be
for a mover.
consistent
You called for a
with
mover,
all
and then you called for a
councillors.
seconder.
Councillor
There was no
Alessi.
seconder.
Councillor Alessi, seeing
motion
as
lapses.
you didn't provide a section of the procedural matters local law, I do not uphold that point of order. That is not a point of order. Councillor Joseph,
Point of order.
under what section of the local law, Councillor?
No, I have a question to the CEO.
Okay, question.
Under the law, under the local laws, is it a provision that a local law has to be quoted, number has to be quoted for a ruling on this matter? Could you please clarify? Thank you.
To the CEO.
Through you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for the question, Councillor. The matter of meeting procedure local law is a matter of past practice and custom in every council. Every council has a different set of rulings around that. I cannot say that I can answer it in day two, but I'm happy to take that on notice.
So to clarify, under section 65 of the local law, yes, I do, as Mayor, have control of the meeting and I could call upon sections of the local law. And if you speak to the Municipal Association of Victoria, a point of order is not a point of order unless you can quote a section of the local law. Thank you, councillors. So, Councillor Kelly, have you clarified the appropriate wording? Wonderful. So, moved Councillor Kelly. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Monteleone. Do I have any questions to the amendment? Do I have any opposition?
Yes.
Yes. Councillor Kelly.
Yes, yeah.
There you go.
There we go. Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'm pleased to stand up and talk about the fee structure. I had a good look at the structure and quite happy with the fees at present. And the reason I'm happy is we must be getting to the opening if it's starting to talk about fee structure. The centre was closed for a long period of time where at the time of the closure, the centre had record numbers of membership, up in excess of 2,500. There was a lot of angst from members that had to go to other centres to try and keep fit. One of council's policies with inside elderly and young alike was to have people active. A lot of people thought they were robbed of that opportunity, especially ones that met at this centre, and hopefully those friendships and their fitness has continued on while the centre's been closed. But it's just something I'd like to have monitored and come back within 6 months after it's open so we know how we're tracking as far as membership. The reason I'm asking that is there's every corner that you look at these days, there's a fitness centre, there's 24 hours, there's all these fitness classes, you see them running around the streets. I just hope that this centre gets back to the centre it was prior to it closing. I wasn't one that wanted it closed, I wanted to do it in stages and keep it open and keep everyone happy, but the decision went against that. So I'm just glad we're getting to the stage where it's going to reopen. Hopefully it goes back to the numbers it was previously and people start enjoying to get fit again.
Thank you, Councillor. I call upon the seconder, Councillor Montaglioni. Nothing to add. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Alessi.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. The decision that was taken to do the building all at once was the best decision because now the centre is nearly ready for opening. Otherwise, it would have been next year or close to next year for opening. Councillor Thomas, Joseph and I visited the centre a few months ago and it was looking great. Driving past, it looks even better now, and I really look forward to the opening, which obviously is imminent. I think the idea of the fee structure, the way it's been presented to us, is fantastic because it doesn't lock in people for 1 year or lock in to the whole, every activity in the centre. People can go and choose gym and swim or swim and sauna. There's a whole variety of options that they can take, and I would say that the discussions with the YMCA and council officers who have put this together is precisely for the matter that was raised because of the competition of gyms and the like nowadays all over the place. But what I'm especially pleased is that it gives opportunity for people on cards, seniors cards or healthcare cards, to be able to achieve a cheaper entry than was the case because of all the different types of membership that can be taken. The fact that memberships doesn't lock into any contract, I think it's a great idea that people can go in and finish. They can do for a month and then leave instead of being locked in for a year. So I commend the officers that have worked on this together with the YMCA to bring us these options. And I guess that at some point in time, obviously, like everything else, we do review and see what happens. But I do commend the work that's been done, and the centre's looking great, and I'm looking forward to its opening.
Thank you, Councillor Alessi. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Having none, Councillor Kelly, would you like your right of reply? No. We'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Item 6.2.2, Councillor Lalios. Sorry, your microphone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move the item.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Pavlidis. Do I have any questions? Do I have any opposition? No? Councillor Lalios.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. This item was deferred from one of our meetings from last year, and it's a great report, and I'd like to just start off by commending the officers on providing this report to councillors, and it's actually been enhanced because we now have an action plan that goes with it. And the action plan is quite detailed. It goes for two years, from 2020 to 2022. It has a number of actions within it that will enhance the actual plan, and some of the things within it are under Objective 1, provide services and programs that promote positive wellbeing and development. And one of the outcome indicators is an increased number of families self-reporting general health as good or excellent. And as we know, health is really important to each and every one of us, individually, collectively, and as a community. One of the great things about this plan is that it gives us the definition of what young people are, and I note that there's one of those around the table, and that's you, Madam Mayor. And one of the great things within this plan, I'm just going to find the relevant page. It's Objective 4 on page 128. Provide children, young people and families with opportunities to inform decisions and connect with the community. And what more better way than young people to actually be elected to council, so that objective is particularly met. And I know that last night, again, one of your suggestions was to have a youth advisory committee, and both you and Councillor Desiato, who just, I think, goes outside the definition of young people, just makes it just outside of the definition. You both hosted this inaugural event, and I know that people who I spoke to at the forum said that they actually felt heard. They actually felt that it wasn't tokenistic. They actually felt part of the community, part of the council and part of the decision making. So from that perspective, it's great to have thriving young people on council. It's great to have a fantastic plan like this that's been developed by our staff, that hasn't been outsourced by consultants. Our own staff did this work, which is absolutely fantastic, and now we have an action plan to go with it. So I look forward to seeing what the success looks like when we measure it with the new committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lalios. As there is no opposition, I put that to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? I believe that was unanimous. Unanimously carried. Item 6.3.1, Councillor Montaglioni.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to make an amendment, propose an amendment to this item.
We'll wait for that to be circulated. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Desiato. Do I have any questions? Is there Councillor Pavlidis?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. As you appreciate, I only just got a chance to see this. So I do have a question for the relevant director. Not sure who it is. Oh, right.
It could be to the CEO.
Yes, whether what impact that proposed amendment might have on the works and the rolling out of the total contract as proposed in the report.
Thank you, Councillor. To the CEO.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor, for the question, and I'd ask that the Director of Transport and Infrastructure come forward to reply.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Madam Mayor. As usually, we only come to Council for the tender approval, so another process will inevitably delay the process a bit, but exactly what impact, I don't have the information with me tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. Just a
Councillor
sub-question to
Yes.
that. So is there likely to be a financial, through the CEO, is there likely to be a financial impact in delaying, given what the Director just shared with us?
Thank you. To the CEO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I believe the answer from the Director was that we're not quite certain of that at this stage. So if it's sought, we can take that on notice.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
So, yeah, sorry, Madam Mayor, given
Councillor
the
Public.
information that's been shared with Council, I find it difficult to vote on this. In principle, I wouldn't have necessarily an objection to it, but
Sorry, do you
without
have a
knowing what the
question?
financial impact might be, I think it's difficult for Council to
Councillor,
make.
I haven't called upon
Okay, so
councillors
the
to speak
question
just
is,
yet.
so the question is, what would be the purpose and what do we mean by well before? That could be, you know, another budget cycle, it could be another 5 years. What do we mean by that, and what is the purpose in having that amendment?
Well, the term "well before" can really only be answered by the mover
Could I have
of
the
the
answer
amendment.
from the...
Yes, yes, that's what I was trying to say. So, Councillor Montaglione, if you can clarify what you mean by that. The microphones aren't working. There we go.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To allay any fears, there is nothing to in question that particular. This is just about involving councils. Councillors, as the community would appreciate, need to have skin involved in the game.
Sorry, Councillor, instead of entering into debate, I believe the question was particularly in reference to well before. What do you mean
well before,
by that?
I'm actually happy to leave that to the discretion of the officers. If it would assist Councillor Pavlidis, I'm happy to put 3 months as a fair and reasonable period.
Well, it's your choice, Councillor. Is that what you're willing to do at the point?
I'll
at this
even
point
do a
in time?
month.
So
1 month.
one
before.
month?
Yep.
Is the seconder happy with that? Councillor Desiato, yes? Okay. Do we have any further questions?
Yes,
Councillor
Madam Mayor, the
Pavlidis.
other part of my question was, what is the purpose, what is the mover, what is the purpose in proposing that that amendment, asking for another month? I'm not sure. I'm trying to follow his line of argument.
I understand. I believe your questions now are really based upon what will be brought up during debate. So maybe I'll move on to debate unless there are any other questions for one of the directors. No? Well then, is there any opposition? Yes. I now call upon the mover, Councillor Montaglione.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, this is really quite simple. This is just about giving information to councillors. The community expect councillors to be involved, to have some, as I said earlier, skin in the game, to actually preside on decisions based on information. This is about, obviously this is an ongoing process. The improvements to the Lalor Streetscape have been going on for near on 10 years. So it's an evolving issue. So there have been a number of changes, there have been a number of reports that have been brought to council in that time. This is just about flagging the importance that officers just inform councillors so that we have an opportunity to add and hopefully impose some improvements to the potential outcomes involved in this. It's as simple as that. It's about giving information so that when we meet with our constituents, we can give them educated information. It's about being more involved, not simply having a process come about by stealth or by no information. So it's just really about giving councillors the opportunity to actually have some input. It's as simple as that.
Thank you, Councillor. I now call upon the seconder, Councillor Desiato. I reserve my right. Thank you. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Cox.
Look, I understand, I think, where Councillor Montagliani wants to go, and I think that the information that he's asking for is not improper. I just wish that we would think through the actions. This is accepting a tender of works in relation to stage 2. It is a process that if he wants to be informed, there are many ways of being informed as a councillor and raising the issues. And I think I have difficulties the way it's been framed, because in answer to Councillor Pavlidis' question, we'll drop it down to 3 months or 1 month. But there is this inference that the staff are not giving us information, and that's what I object to. Saying that it was done by stealth or no consultation, that's the problem that I have with the intent of the amendment that's been put. I would far prefer that point 3 be dropped off. There is adequate processes through actions of councillors to get the information, and I have no disagreement that information on stage 3 should be given, and I've got questions on stage 3 as much as anybody else and other parts of it, but I think confusing it with a tender process and the tender acceptance is the wrong way to go about it. So I'll be opposing.
Thank you. Does any other councillor? Councillor Kelly.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I totally support the amendment. I think what Councillor Montagliani and the way I read it is that prior to it going to tender, we make sure we cross our T's and dot our I's, that everything's captured in the plan or in the process moving forward. So it's a great idea. If what the director just said was that the next process would be just to come to council at the tender process, this will be one extra stage where councillors can have a look. It might be a briefing that talks about what's going to go in, what's been left out, and councillors then can have a bit of an input prior to it going to tender. So it's a great initiative by Councillor Montagliani, and I fully support it.
Thank you. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Well, then I call upon the seconder, Councillor Desiato.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with this amendment by Councillor Montagliani. I believe it is preferable that this item had come to a forum so we could have looked into it a bit more. So I think that's the motive. So at least stage 3 we get that opportunity. I don't see anything wrong with being brought back to council just before we finalise that.
Thank you. Councillor Montagliani, you have a right of reply.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Anyone that's ever followed council would know that I've been a bit of a critic in terms of councillors being hypocritical. And there's such an example this evening where we'll be presiding on the toilets, the delivery of toilets later in the council meeting. The councillors who, at that point in time, last month, said they wanted more information. This is all this is. Asking officers, it's a reminder, it's just another flag. Please inform councillors, because we're expending the money of ratepayers, and we need to have oversight, because that's our role, that's our duty. And I find it absurd that councillors are arguing because they don't want the information or they don't want it formalised, because that's really all this is asking. This is just asking for the mere formality to be noted, that councillors need to be informed of as this progresses, and it'll progress and morph into the lovely outcome that our officers will deliver for our community. That is not in question. We know we're going to get a good project, but this is about involving ourselves. This is part of the consultation process, and I find it unusual.
Point of order,
that
Madam Mayor.
The councillors are objecting.
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Pavlidis.
Under section 61, I feel I've been misrepresented in Councillor Montagliani saying that in standing up and asking the questions that I did and expressing a concern and tabling my concern that I don't want the information. If you recall, I did, Madam Mayor, preempt my point by saying, in principle, I could see value in what Councillor Montagliani is proposing, but given the questions that I posed to the Director about the impact, particularly the financial impact that this may have...
Councillor Pavlidis.
Well, my point is I've been misrepresented.
Section
and I'd like
61 isn't actually regarding misrepresentation. Section 61 reads, A member calling the attention of the chairperson to a point of order is not regarded as speaking to a motion or an amendment. I believe the section you were actually wanting to refer to is section 39, subsection 1.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Having said that, though, I do take your point, and I do not uphold it based on the fact that Councillor Montaglione did not mention specific councillors. He was just simply providing his opinion generally to the decision-making process of council as a whole.
About
Therefore,
councillors,
I
and
do
I
not
don't accept
uphold
that.
your point of
I
order.
don't accept
Thank you.
being
I've made my
misrepresented.
ruling, councillor. Thank you. Councillor Montaglione.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As I was saying, this is simply about seeking more information and just to formalise that process. I know that that opinion or that expression that I have won't be shared in this table because, you know, month after month, I get it all the time. The councillors, when it suits them, they want all this information, all the high detail, and when it does suit them, they don't want to know about it. So there's a great inconsistency on the principles that some councillors bring to this chamber. My principle has been consistent from the day I walked in here. I want to get as much information, I want to be as informed as I possibly can. That is the only way I can justify and represent my constituents to the best of my ability. I want more information or as much information as I need. Anything other than that, denial of information or restriction of information is clearly going to affect my ability to look after our constituents. That is why we are here. And I remind councillors, if they use that as their ethic, that they'll understand exactly the purpose of my
Sorry,
amendment.
councillor, you've
Thank you,
gone over
Madam Mayor,
time.
I'm finished.
Thank you. We'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. We now go to the substantive. So, a division has been called. We can take that vote again. To members of the public gallery who don't know what that means, basically it's a brand new vote and councillors can vote any way they want and their names are recorded in the minutes. So a division has been called. All those in favour of the amendment. Councillors Sturjova, Montaglione, Kelly, Lalios and Desiato. All those against. Councillors Joseph, Cox and all those abstaining. Councillors Pavlidis, Kuzmevsky and Alessi. That is carried. Yeah, that's my casting vote. Oh, well, so I need to mention that I am exercising my casting vote, so that is why it is in favour. That's why it's carried. So now we move on to item 6.4.2. Councillor Lalios.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I have an alternative that can be circulated.
Yep, we'll wait for that to be circulated. Thank you. Having now read the amendment, I call upon a seconder. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Desiato. Do I have any questions?
Question.
Councillor Alessi.
Through the CEO to the relevant director. Point 2 in this alternate resolution says that Note that the 2021 Wellbeing Plan was developed by the executive leadership team with no input from councillors. If I recall correctly, and the director can inform me, there was input from councillors. It was put at a forum, and I think at the time it was the director, Liana Thompson, who and her team that brought it to forum for discussion, to briefing meetings for discussion.
Thank you. To
So
the CEO.
I stand to be corrected, of course.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor, for the question. Through you, I would ask the Director of Corporate Services if we can have that confirmed, or otherwise the question of the input of councillors, please.
Through you, Madam Mayor. The councillors were informed as part of the People Plan strategy with regards to council developing a wellbeing plan for the organisation. So that point 2, councillors weren't obviously involved in the development specifically of the 2021 plan, but councillors were informed at the development of the People strategy stage.
Thank you very much. Do I have any further questions? Councillor Montaglioni.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Perhaps through our CEO and possibly the Director, I just, given that this is a quarterly safety wellbeing report, have other safety, so I've just gone through the portal and there's an abundance of community safety and wellbeing reports, but I don't seem to find one that's given specific attention to staff. Has there been other reports presented before this one, or is this the first?
To the CEO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you. Through you, I would ask the Director of Corporate Services to establish an answer, please.
Through you, Madam Mayor, this report has been reported to councillors previously, and it's part of a quarterly reporting suite that's provided quarterly.
Councillor Montaglioni.
Through you, Mayor. So 2 or 3, or how many have been presented? Can you guess?
No, I can't guess, I'm sorry, but I can take that on notice.
Multiple?
I'm not sure.
More than 5 or 6? No.
I'm not sure, I'd have to take that on notice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Joseph.
I have a question in relation to point number 4. Note that councillors are unaware of the particulars of the WorkSafe investigation. I'm sure there has been memos from the CEO's office in relation to the WorkSafe investigation, and also there has been a number of news reports on this, and I've even seen a few councillors actually quoting in the newspaper
Councillor,
on the
what's your
subject.
question?
Yeah, my question is,
That
can the
was a
CEO, acting CEO, confirm that, I know he's new into the role, but somebody could confirm that the communication has been sent to the councillors with regards to the WorkSafe investigation?
To the CEO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you. Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor. And again, I would call upon the Director of Corporate Services with the detail required.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm unaware whether councillors have been informed of the details. This forum would not be the time to talk about the details because the details of that would be confidential. However, the point of noting that for councillors, just for councillors to be aware that there was an investigation happening and councillors may be called upon during that investigation.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Having none, is there opposition? Yes, there is. I call upon the mover, Councillor Lalios.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Some really good stuff is happening at the City of Whittlesea, as can be noted by the first point, that we note the report including the successful implementation of the 2019 Wellbeing Plan and the development of the 2020-21 Wellbeing Plan. It says in the report that There were 32 actions for 2019, sitting under certain elements of leadership, support, communication, accountability and recognition, and that all of those were actually ticked off, which is really, really good. The rest of the motion, I think, is you know, this report could have just gone through. We could have just noted it. However, it's important to note, because I think there's, you know, through media reports, through a whole range of statements made by a whole range of people on social media, on television, on radio, in print, that councillors are 100% across what's going on, 100% across WorkSafe investigations, 100% across about staffing matters, which is not the case. Yes, the tone at the top is set by the executive leadership team, set by the councillors, set by the CEO, set by everyone, really. However, what we need to be aware of within this recommendation is that we're not across, as councillors, we're not across all of the particulars. I was just made aware just then through the question that was asked, and from the answer that was given, that councillors might be called upon for a WorkSafe investigation. And if there is one, you know, I will fully cooperate. But they're the sorts of things that I'm trying to put through in this recommendation, that statements have been made, but councillors are not aware of the particulars. The other thing which is extremely important, and it's part 5 of this recommendation, because our staff are one of our most important assets here at the City of Whittlesea. It's not just the physical infrastructure that's important. Our staff are important as well. But what is really important as well is that councillors' safety and wellbeing is prioritised as well. So when we have a report that talks about staff, when we have a wellbeing plan that talks about staff and talks about one of our greatest assets, councillors need to be involved in that as well. And the mental and physical wellbeing of councillors, our wellbeing and our safety as councillors need to be prioritised just as much as anyone else's health and safety. And that's what point 5 is trying to articulate here. I think we received an email today which said that wellbeing and safety is the business of everyone around this table, but everyone in the organisation as well. And if we're going to be receiving a report like this, it's important that we're all informed, we're all aware of the particulars, and if there is anything untoward that is happening, that be brought to the fore, that conversation be had, and that things get fixed. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Desiato, as the seconder.
I reserve my right.
Thank you. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Montaglione.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll keep mine brief. I completely commend Councillor Lalor for bringing this amendment to the fore, because it really speaks of the tone that is currently facing this council. We've had councillors running off to media, recklessly making claims, disparaging the council, essentially defaming the council. They will own those issues that they've reported to the media. They'll own that, and for good reason. But it's important to note that this isn't just a report card, a snapshot of what the staff are going through at the moment, because there is more to see than the eye. And unless councillors have some involvement into it, I don't believe that we should merely just note it and pass it off as an afterthought. It is important to note that councillors have an opinion, have the interests of the community, and that involves us having a thorough and informative discussion around what is actually happening in the organisation. Because the good people out in the community, they just read the rubbish that's being fed to them in the newspapers. the misinformation, and they think this place is falling apart at the seams. Well, I can assure you, Madam Mayor, as the sun will rise tomorrow, this place isn't falling apart. That bills are getting paid, staff are getting paid, and there aren't people knocking on the door asking for money for debts that remain unpaid. The council is functioning as it should, and it is quite a little bit premature for the report just to merely make a note and move forward. I think it would be certainly helpful that councillors have some participation in the discussion, and at the very least, what this resolution is merely seeking is that we accept the report as it speaks, but that we weren't involved in it. And that's a matter of fact. And I don't know how that can actually be argued, because what's written up there is a matter of fact, a matter of point. Now, I just finally say, if councillors want to assist this council in getting about its business, of doing the good work it needs to do for the community, of delivering the infrastructure and the amenities and services that we're obliged to provide, they should spend more of their time focusing on actually doing that. Not running off to the media, making false allegations, saying that the world's about to cave in. That is not helpful. Inciting staff and progressing things like petitions and stuff, that doesn't happen in other councils. It's very disappointing that as a fourth term councillor that I need to actually be part of that system, somehow that I'm guilty of causing grief to the council. I certainly hope that's not the case. And I certainly think that in order for goodwill to move forward, councils need to actually concentrate on their elected duties, and that is delivering for the community, not disparaging the council.
Your time is up. Thank you. Do I have Councillor Alessi?
Yes, thank you. It's easy to get up and say that about things in the paper, etc., but the realities are that the comments in the papers didn't start 2 months ago or 3 months ago. They started some time back. So it's no good calling the pot calling the kettle black. But I refer what this report is about. This report is about the well-being of staff, and it's a quarterly report, and it's got, yes, the plan has been successful, but what has actually happened with the staff has been an absolute tragedy. We've had record numbers of staff going off on all sorts of stress leave and other leave because of certain events involving just a small number of certain councillors. Now, it's interesting to read on page 207, the report talks about the Pulse survey, and it asks a question, and it says, this question remained constant in quarter 4 of 2018-19 and quarter 1 of 2019-20, with results being 81%, 81.5 and 81.3 respectively. However, in quarter 2 of 2019-20, this dropped significantly to 70.8, which is now below the local government benchmark of 75.1. So it's important to note that there have been things occurring as a result of certain councillors and their behaviours and the staff being affected. And this survey is about staff, it's not about councillors. And people ought to take note of it, and councillors need to take note of it. It's not good enough to stand up and say that nothing has occurred, because it has. And it's evident on staff, it's evident in the organisation.
Thank you. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Cox.
I rise to speak simply because I don't agree with the resolution or the amendment, Chair, that's been put forward, and that is that clearly this document that we're asked to note is about staff. There are clear signs within the report of some issues, but this is attempts, in my view, my opinion, to get out of jail, because the problem is sitting around this table. And despite what has just been launched at councillors going to the media, as Councillor Alessi quite correctly alluded to, this has been going on for a long period of time. It was actually mentioned in the local government annual report. 3 councillors of this council declined to go and advise where their media sources were in releasing confidential information, as an example. But we're in a situation where the behaviours here led to the departure of our North Ward colleague. That's a fact. I can't hide from that. He was due to front a conduct panel. And it was about bullying. He's departed. That case hasn't been fairly aired. There is psychological issues that have been...
Councillor, I just must say it's inappropriate for you to reflect on former councillors and panels that they may or may not have been a part of. None of us are privy to that information unless you care to shed some light, because I certainly don't know and the council doesn't either. So if you could please stick to topic. We are discussing the safety and wellbeing report this evening.
I'll take that on notice. And I just say that this is a process of trying to get out of jail. It is really a situation of ignoring the absolute obvious that's in front of us. We have had issues in this council. It is reflected in the Pulse surveys. It is reflected. You won't let me table it publicly because the staff have given it to me. I haven't incited it, and that's the referral, the inference that was made a moment ago. That was given to me by staff and asked to be tabled publicly. 187 people to 210 people, staff members, signed a petition. They wanted it public. They didn't want it hidden under the covers. They didn't want to ignore it. We had staff go on stress leave. We've had issues out here in the front with flags. We've had issues that go beyond normal meeting practice. But I find it absolutely objectionable that we come here and talk about a wellbeing plan that is developed for the safety of councillors, because we've had 3 attempts at that. Behind the scenes, and what the residents don't know, is behind the scenes we had 3 attempts at that. People sitting down trying to do professional facilitation, and people did not participate. So you can't come here and put up this type of recommendation and say that it's everybody else's fault or trying to attach it to the staff. It is wrong, it is obnoxious. We should be simply noting the report as it stands at the moment. And as to the WorkSafe investigation, I did have a chuckle when Councillor Joseph asked the question. I wondered which one, because there's been so many, and I've been subject to the interviews, so I'm happy to acknowledge that. I'm not going to name the parties, but people ought to know better when they throw bricks in glass houses.
Thank you. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Before I call upon the seconder, I wish to speak. It must be noted that our protocol as it stands at the City of Whittlesea is that councillors are not allowed to interact with staff members at all. All that I could say to a staff member is, hello, how are you? And that is it. And that is sad, but that is our protocol. The only staff members that we can interact with directly are our directors sitting just to the right of me. So there is a bit of confusion here as to how councillors could have impacted upon the wellbeing of the 1,200 staff members in the organisation. Now, something that I know for a fact is that there is poor behaviour within the organisation, and that is something that should be brought to light through this report, and that should be remedied, because every staff member in the City of Whittlesea deserves to feel safe in their workplace and deserves to feel comfortable in their workplace. And that is something that I proudly stand here today in being a supporter of. And so I do thank the staff who have prepared this report, because it is important that those staff members who are experiencing stress and difficulties within the organisation, and especially within the restructure that happened with the previous CEO, that they do feel supported in their positions and they do feel safe to come to work. I am also very concerned of behaviours of our councillors, not particularly towards staff, but towards each other. And I stand here in saying that every councillor, as well as being here for the City of Whittlesea, also deserves to feel safe in their workplace. We also are here in the City of Whittlesea working for our community, and we should not fear coming within these council chambers or within the doors of the council offices. And I will be brutally frank to my community, and whether this means that I'm slammed by my colleagues or not, in saying that I have not only witnessed, but I have experienced bullying from other councillors. And that is not right. That is not right, because everyone here should feel safe in their workplace. As councillors, we should feel comfortable to explain our points of view and to work tirelessly for our community without being belittled, intimidated, threatened or harassed by our colleagues. And that is why I'm in support of this amendment, because we too as councillors deserve to have a wellbeing plan as well. And we also deserve to be supported. Thank you. I call upon the seconder, Councillor Desiato.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I apologise if I'm a bit slow at talking, but there's just been a lot said. So I will probably go all over the place. So one thing I wanted to emphasise was Councillor Lalios's point about our staff are our biggest asset. They drive this organisation, they do the very best for our community, and we thank them for it. And we need them to be at their mental and physical best selves to be able to get the best results for our community. And everyone wants to feel supported in their workplace. And I do acknowledge that in such a large organisation, there is going to be a lot of changes in culture, in roles, and some people are more okay with change than others. That's how life is. I'm dealing with it. Everyone's dealing with it in their own workplaces. But everyone needs to feel supported, and that is the point of this plan. But I will be frank, I can't take responsibility for 1,000 staff members where, how do I say this? I'm not, as Madam Mayor, you have stated, we are not allowed to interact with staff. I work full time. I don't speak to staff other than the beautiful directors we have here today. It's just hi and bye. I don't unfortunately know the particulars of what's going on in the workplace, if there's politics, if there's issues amongst the staff. There's 1,000 staff, there's so many different levels. It's not our role to be across it. It will be the directors and the CEO that drive that culture and change. All we can do as councillors is, support any process that will help the staff feel supported at their workplace. But the reason, for also this amendment is that we also need to be able to take care of ourselves as well. I haven't felt supported as a councillor here. This is my first term, and all I wanted to do was good for the community. I didn't come here to fight with people. I don't care about politics. I just want to do good things. And it's been a very difficult term, and it's broken my heart multiple times. So honestly, that's why I fully support the amendment saying that we need a wellbeing plan for, of course, the staff, always the staff, but we also need one for the councillors. I need to know that there is somewhere I can go safe and to talk to. I do apologise, Madam Mayor, for everything you've gone through as well, and I'll do whatever I can to support you as Deputy Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. I now call upon the mover. You have a right of reply. Councillor Lalios.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I think it has all been said, but sometimes bringing this to the fore, shining the sunlight that it needs to have, and not just saying this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. How's it going to be fixed? Lots of people around the table are saying this is wrong, that's wrong, this is wrong, that's wrong. As I said, comments all over the place. But what's going to be done to fix it? And we all have a responsibility to do that. I feel sorry that you have experienced what you have experienced in your short period of being a councillor, and especially in this term of being the mayor. It's never pleasant to be on the other end and the receiving end of behaviours that are not acceptable in any contemporary workplace. So what is important is that our community knows that we are employees of this council for the purposes of occupational health and safety. So having part 5 in this recommendation is not out of the ordinary. And our community also needs to know that councillors do not employ staff. That's not our domain. We don't have a responsibility in the day-to-day running of the organisation. That's operational. That's the domain of, under the Local Government Act, that's the domain of the CEO. That's the domain and the responsibility of the CEO. But what we can do is set the tone and set the culture of the organisation. And what is important is that if there is things in the organisation that we're not aware of, we might be aware of some things, but if there's stuff that we're not aware of, we need to be aware of that so that we can be part of the solution. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now put that to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? I haven't called that just yet. I'm using my casting vote and that is carried. A division has been called. All those in favour? Councillors?
Madam Mayor, there's no need for a casting vote. Count the numbers. A councillor is missing.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. It is carried. I beg your pardon. I didn't see the one person. Thank you for your help there. So a division has been called. We'll call the vote again. All those in favour, Councillors Sturjova, Monteleone, Kelly, Lalios and Desiato. All those against, Councillors Joseph and Cox. All those abstaining, Councillors Kuzmevsky and Alessi. That is carried. We now move on to item 6.5.2, appointment of councillor representation on organisations and committees. Councillor Kelly.
Madam Mayor, I move to defer the item. There's a vacancy being created through the resignation of a councillor. That vacancy will be filled on a particular date. I forget the date, 21st or 5th? 25th of March. I believe it's not fair if whoever was to fill that vacancy didn't have the opportunity to represent her ward in some of these areas, so hers or his, whoever. So it's just my intention to defer the item until the vacancy's been filled.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Monteleone. As it's procedural, we'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. We now move on to item 7.1, Notice of Motion 881, Public Toilets at David Street, Lalor. Councillor Monteleone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just want to, before I commence and the time starts clicking, so are we at the, I just want to refresh what point are we at. So from my recollection, we're at the amendment. So am I at the beginning of that amendment or
yes,
midway
sorry,
through?
Councillor, I can inform the council. So I note that we have a notice of motion listed on the notice paper, which was originally listed for the 10th of December 2019 council meeting and was then adjourned to the 17th of December 2019 meeting and then the 4th of February 2020 council meeting. At the meeting on the 4th of February 2020, the item was deferred to this meeting and it is now presented for council's consideration. If we need further clarity, we can look to the Manager of Governance. Otherwise, Councillor Monteleone, you hold the floor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I am in favour and I rise to speak about the original motion. And I believe that's what we're presiding because I believe we're presiding on the original motion because the amendment merely...
Yep, so Councillor, before you speak to it, it was just to present the motion. You're moving it. Okay. So now I call upon a seconder. Councillor Lalios. Now I ask for questions. Do we have any questions? Councillor Alessi.
Madam Mayor, CEO, for the relevant director. Now, we do have an item that was carried earlier and there's confidential information in the confidential section about the Lalor shops, and that also talks about the establishment of two, I can't recall the special name of the toilets, but the two toilets as part of that tender process that we just accepted. So my question for the director is, the relevant director or the CEO, if they can clarify if these toilets have already been carried by council through that previous tender, or are these other toilets? Because if they've been carried, this is superfluous.
To the CEO.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor, for the question. I have had a briefing on this matter to date, and I understand it, and I will ask the Director of... I've got to get this right now. The Director of City Transport and Presentation to back my knowledge, but I understand that the toilet in question is within the scope of the stage that has been already approved to proceed. And there is a specific style and type and pre-specified toilet, and a location around situation as to where it would be located was assessed, and it is deemed to be going in that location. But I do invite, if so required, to add anything more from the Director of City Presentation and Transport.
Thank you, Councillor Susan May. Yes, basically what the acting CEO said is correct. The Exolus is part of the 6.3.1 tender council just resolved adopt. It is a product order to manufacture to order, would take about 20 weeks from the date of signing the contract for it to be delivered. Then will take time to install and collect. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Alessi.
As this matter has been resolved, I like to move that this item be dismissed, please.
Dismissed? Just a minute. Okay, so seeing as there's no provision in the local law to dismiss a notice of motion, the only way to move forward is to ask Councillor Monteleone if he would like the item to lapse.
No, I'm saying it's
Councillor Monteleone, do you believe it's been dealt with? Would you like the item to lapse? Sorry, councillors, if I may. Councillor Monteleone.
Madam Mayor, through you, we haven't voted on the item, so it's not lapsing. The item is on the table for discussion. If there are no objectors, I'm happy to suggest we can vote.
No, ultimately, just to clarify, I believe the question put to the table by Councillor Alessi is whether you believe this has already been dealt with and whether you believe we should continue or not.
No, the item has not been dealt with. It needs to be continued. It needs to be formalised.
Thank you for that, Councillor. So now I call upon any further questions. Councillor Alessi.
Madam Mayor, the item, the CEO and the Director have said that this item is included in a tender that we have just approved only a few items ago. So if this goes to its full conclusion, does it mean that then we're going to have two sets of toilets? I mean, it's ludicrous.
Okay, Councillor,
I'll
ask the question.
And it's not really up to...
So to the CEO, if you can provide some clarity to Councillor Alessi.
Councillor Alessi, I think through you, Madam Chair, you've quoted the responses made and they remain accurate. It is, in a sense, and this is an opinion only, is a redundant motion. But it is not my call to declare it that way.
So, Councillor Montaglioni, it's up to you whether you take that on board. Otherwise, as a councillor, you have every right to continue.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will continue. It'd be ludicrous to suggest that that this is about doubling our toilets. This is merely about inspiring and committing council to a deadline, to a time to start. And I'll just, for the benefit...
Councillor, instead of entering into debate, Councillor Cox, was that what you were...
Well, I was going to say, before we get into the debate, I think we need to clarify, and I'll ask the question through the CEO. It is not just the mover of the resolution that can rule this out of order. You've told us several times under Rule 65 that you're the chairperson of this meeting, and arising from the meeting for final and binding ruling, you also have a right to rule it out as being superfluous.
Yes, however, firstly, that wasn't a question to the CEO, nor was it a point of order, so I don't uphold that. But I do take on your point. I do have control of the meeting under Section 65, in which I'm personally not ruling it out of order, so I don't.
My apologies. The question was to the CEO, is there an ability for the chair to rule it out?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor, for the question. I think on this matter of procedural accuracy, I would defer to the Manager of Governance, who may have a point to make.
To the Manager of Governance.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think the difficulty Council faces is that it has already resolved on a contract earlier in the meeting, and to now resolve on this matter puts us in a situation where there'll be a conflict between the two resolutions, which will make it difficult, if not impossible, for the Council to then, or the CEO, to implement the Council's decision. And so nothing, in fact, will happen in regard to this development. So it would seem to me that the contract that was led earlier in the meeting has addressed the points, or taken over the points that are attempting to be addressed through the amendment that we are now due to discuss. And so I think, as has been suggested, I think really the matter lapses. The matter has been dealt with by the council earlier in the meeting.
Unless the construction date is different to...
Well, that's the whole point. That's the whole point, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor.
I'm not completely confident that the matter's been dealt with or lapsed, because we have, at our previous meeting, we asked to have this matter heard at this particular meeting. So how on earth did it lapse? Now, in terms of whether there's been a sum quantified and allocated for the construction of these toilets, that's fine. If that's the case, then so be it. What this amendment is asking is merely to stamp a date that we must commence, because the good community have waited 9 years for these toilets, and I dare say that they ought not wait a day longer. So this is merely about commitment to it. Now, if the staff and the officers are confident that this start date is captured.
So, Councillor, instead maybe we can ask that question to the relevant director for the
Thank
clarity
you.
of not only the councillors but our community as well, to the CEO, whether we can receive some clarity around the commencement date, as if no commencement date was specified in the original council item, which was item 6.3.1, then this motion is something different that council can choose to resolve. To the CEO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for through you and for the question, Councillor Montaglioni. I've just been given to understand that the contract is due to be signed within the next 2 or 3 business days, and then from thence it is a 20-week lead time to receive the actual toilet unit in block. So if you extrapolate that, we're pretty close to this timeline, and that is the intention. Albeit that services can be connected on that time for commissioning purposes.
I'd be satisfied and comfortable if the director could confirm if that timeline will still be current and achievable. If there's confirmation on that, I'm happy to allow the matter to rest lapse.
Thank you. To the CEO.
So through you, Madam Mayor, we can take that on notice as advice to be provided. Happy to do that.
Okay.
So, Councillor Montalioni, I believe then your item lapses.
That is fine.
As it's not
I think the
different.
important thing here, Madam Mayor, is that the community get and look forward to brand new toilets that they've been 9 years in waiting.
Thank you. Yes, no, Councillor, I do understand your intention so that we do provide these services to the community in a timely manner, and it's great that that's been reflected in the previous report. So thank you very much, Councillor. We'll move on. As there are no questions to officers, we move on to urgent business. Do I have any urgent business items for this evening, councillors? Having none, reports from delegates. There is one from myself. Just a moment. So last night was a very exciting evening because it was the very first meeting of our Whittlesea Youth Advisory Committee. That was one of the things I set to achieve when being elected on council at the age of 19, because I truly believed that young people's voices needed to be heard, that young people needed to be a part of the decision-making processes of council, and I didn't feel that the current measures sufficed, that we were truly, truly heard. And so we made history in having our very first Youth Advisory Committee last night, and I thank all the councillors who supported me in beginning that initiative, especially my Deputy Mayor, Councillor Ilana Desiato, who was there with me that evening. And my goodness, it was a remarkable evening. We were around these chambers. There were 15 young people sitting at this table and providing their views as to what they believe would be the best outcome for our community on a number of topics. And we had some rigorous debates as well. Firstly, we spoke about young people's access to and participation in sport, in which the young people around the table were talking about a number of issues facing them in terms of expense, how sport in the local area can be quite expensive when you factor in local sports memberships, competitions, equipments, etc. They spoke of the lack of accessibility, how if you're under 18, you need to rely on a parent or guardian to take you around places. You can't just drive around, or you need adequate transport to get you to and from places. So if they don't feel that the local sports club is accessible to them, then they're missing out on that quality sport and physical fitness. And there were a range of other issues that they brought up that we then took note of for our future developments. Then the second topic was youth mental health, which brought upon really open and raw conversations from these young people who spoke of the expense of counselling, who spoke of the fact that they felt they were a burden to their friends and family if they were to open up, and about potential things the council could do, such as workshops and questions and answers sessions, where not only themselves and their peers, but their parents could have a bit of a better understanding about mental health issues as well. And right at the end, I had two young women who approached me and said, one of them, she felt that because she had a disability, she couldn't ever be considered for a leadership position, and this was so meaningful to her. And the other one said that she wasn't class captain at her school and thought she wouldn't amount to much, and it really meant a lot to her that she was also a part of this committee. And it was really beautiful to hear such feedback, and the young people expressed that they didn't feel it was tokenistic, they truly felt that they were heard by the council. And I'm so proud to have been a part of something so wonderful for our community. And I encourage other young people to reach out to the council and share their views as well, because we too, as being 22% of the City of Whittlesea's population, deserve to be heard. Are there any other reports? Oh, I need a motion to accept my report. I beg your pardon, I forgot. Moved Councillor Kelly, seconded Councillor Monteleone. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Are there any other reports from delegates? Having none, we move on. Councillors, I require a motion to close the meeting to the public under section